concepsida conscientization z kanna pukhalisi internal rebuilding of the society, critical thinking tausi, critical awareness tausi haibani. Aina mi amada nang adabu akoi free movement phangde, life right to life properly laite, extraordinary laws mayam lay, akoi representation na akoi fully represent tauba ngamde, akoi voices taba ngamde, akoi IDP sing issues handle tauba akoi why transparency wali, the employment capacity, the revenue collection, fair governance, quality of roads, quality of water, quality of education, quality of government schools. These are all big ꯄꯥꯟꯒꯗꯧꯔꯤꯕ ꯍꯩꯗꯨ conscientization ngamba mahi ama oini haibsi yaroidoba hai akoi ngamthoknarदौनि hairasi imagination da bhabna saraga koi ngamthoknarदौनि haibase conscientization akoi ware akoi sarkar semalodौनि akoi sarkar lehalodौनि akoi aduna CM oihandौनि aduna CM oihandौनि I think these ultimately tare maram aduna ngasi aikoina thengnariba crisis situation asi icham chamba ꯃꯨꯛꯅꯕ ꯑꯃꯈꯛꯇ ꯑꯣꯏꯕꯇ ꯅꯠꯇꯅ ꯅꯨꯡꯗ ꯈꯨꯟꯅꯥꯏꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯚꯦꯂꯨ ꯁꯤꯁꯇꯦꯝꯗ ꯗꯤꯄꯟ ꯑꯣꯏꯗꯕ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯅꯤꯅ ꯊꯣꯛꯂꯛꯑꯒ ꯃꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯀꯥꯟꯅꯕ ꯈꯔ ꯉꯥꯏꯍꯥꯛꯀꯤ ꯄꯤꯔꯒ ꯃꯤꯍꯨꯠ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯒ ꯂꯩꯄꯥꯛ ꯄꯥꯏꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯊꯥꯛꯇꯨꯅꯗꯤ ꯀꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯃꯤꯅꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯁꯤ ꯄꯨꯟꯅ ꯊꯝꯅꯕ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯕꯗ ꯀꯔꯝꯕ ꯃꯈꯜꯒꯤ Thank you everyone. Aduga Yaul Chanura Sinbi Bagidamata I Gasai Tabadi Loi I Pangzai Tai. I just sang Basu I site that Duga Tabas Pange Baduga. I ID to show out the Buddha in a speaker request how to sang the Male anyway. I thank the organizer, host, Aduga I Mang the Ngang Bikiba, Kumarup San, the Rup Mohen Lui Taza Hore. Other keynote Haigadra conceptual introduction to Sui Taza Hore at Yamnuai. I particular topics sida oina piriba theme sida oina focus tawjige yam tiena su thamjige. I'll try to wrap up within 15 or 20 minutes maximum. Akoi na piriba theme si conscientization haibsigi mai isam sam bawang wahanto hairagadi critical thinking haibane. Ado lenga kanana semen sige kanana kamai lenga paipam thoi ꯂꯩꯄꯥꯛꯁꯤ ꯀꯃꯥꯏ ꯔꯟ ꯇꯧꯒꯗꯧꯕꯅꯣ ꯀꯝꯃ꯭ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯇꯤꯁꯤꯡꯒꯒꯤ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯕꯁꯤ ꯀꯃꯥꯏ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯒꯗꯧꯕꯅꯣ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯁꯤ ꯄꯨꯟꯅ ꯊꯝꯅꯕ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯕꯗ ꯀꯔꯝꯕ ꯃꯈꯜꯒꯤ ꯋꯥꯉꯥꯡ ꯁꯉꯥꯡ ꯀꯔꯝꯕ ꯃꯈꯜꯒꯤ ꯄꯣꯂꯤꯁꯤ ꯀꯔꯝꯕ ꯃꯈꯜꯒꯤ ꯃꯤꯠꯌꯦꯡ ꯚꯤꯖꯟ ꯏꯀꯣꯅꯣꯃꯤ ꯁꯣꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯀꯜꯆꯔ ꯖꯤꯑꯣꯄꯣꯂꯤꯇꯤꯛꯁ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯈꯪꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯔꯤꯚꯤꯌꯨ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯉꯝꯕꯒꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ yamna high end capacity adubni akhona conscientization haisi ai paisa yam paire ai mihut oirani na tholaga mi mayam sida akhona kanaba khara nga ki piraga mihut oiraga lepak paiba adugi thaktuna di conscientization gi meaning si yoba ngamoi scope leite haibasini aduna akhona hoje khoi adu tawdore adu tawre ada tawre hainaba pharyam hairasu the critical consciousness ki elements sing si grassroots tagi akhoi education bu oiro societal deliberations bu oiro family value system du bu oiro masidai sida mami tahandragadi masigi process ama leitragadi khoina pangadoriba heidu ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟ ꯉꯝꯕ ꯃꯍꯩ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯣꯏꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯔꯣꯏꯗꯧꯕ ꯍꯥꯏꯇꯥꯔꯦ꯫ ꯃꯔꯝ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯊꯦꯡꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯀ꯭ꯔꯥꯏꯁꯤꯁ ꯁꯤꯆꯨꯋꯦꯁꯟ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯏꯆꯝ ꯆꯝꯕ ꯃꯨꯛꯅꯕ ꯑꯃꯈꯛꯇ ꯑꯣꯏꯕꯇ ꯅꯠꯇꯅ ꯅꯨꯡꯗ ꯈꯨꯟꯅꯥꯏꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯚꯦꯂꯨ ꯁꯤꯁꯇꯦꯝꯗ ꯗꯤꯄꯟ ꯑꯣꯏꯗꯕ, ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯇꯤꯀꯦꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯗꯕ, ꯔꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯖꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯁꯛ ꯃꯑꯣꯡ ꯃꯇꯧꯁꯤ ꯃꯄꯨꯡ ꯐꯥꯗꯕ, ꯃꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯏꯁꯨꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯊꯣꯛꯂꯛꯄ ꯀꯥꯟꯗ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯚꯤꯖꯟ ꯑꯃꯒ ꯂꯣꯏꯅꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯇꯝ ꯆꯥꯅ ꯃꯐꯝ ꯆꯥꯅ ꯊꯦꯡꯅꯕ ꯉꯝꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯑꯦꯕꯖꯣꯔꯞꯁꯟ ꯀꯦꯄꯥꯁꯤꯇꯤꯗꯨ ꯂꯩꯇꯕ, ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯕ꯭ꯂꯦꯝꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯁꯥꯡꯊꯍꯜꯂꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤꯃ ꯂꯦꯚꯦꯜ ꯑꯃꯗ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯌꯥꯏ꯫ ꯂꯦꯚꯦꯜ ꯑꯅꯤꯁꯨꯕꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯅꯣꯟ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯠ ꯄꯦꯇꯔꯟ ꯑꯃꯗ, ꯁꯤꯚꯤꯜ ꯁꯣꯁꯥꯏꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯄꯦꯇꯔꯟ ꯑꯃꯗ, ꯁꯤꯚꯤꯜ ꯁꯣꯁꯥꯏꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯌꯔꯗꯨꯗ, ꯔꯤꯌꯦꯜꯝꯗꯨꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯈꯨꯟꯅꯥꯏꯗꯨ ꯃꯔꯥ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯆꯦꯠꯁꯤꯜꯍꯜꯂꯒ ꯈꯨꯟꯅꯥꯏꯗꯨ ꯄꯨꯕ ꯑꯃ, ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯒꯅ ꯁꯤꯚꯤꯜ ꯁꯣꯁꯥꯏꯇꯤꯁꯤ ꯄꯣꯂꯤꯇꯤꯀꯦꯜ ꯏꯟꯁꯇꯤꯇ꯭ꯌꯨꯁꯟ ꯀ꯭ರಿꯌꯦꯠ ꯇꯧꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯨꯅ ꯁꯦꯝꯃꯛꯄ ꯑꯃ, ꯑꯗꯣ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗꯗꯤ ꯑꯅꯤꯃꯛꯁꯤꯗꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯂꯥꯛꯏꯕ ꯀ꯭ꯔꯥꯏꯁꯤꯁ ꯑꯁꯤ꯫ ꯈꯨꯗꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ ꯒ꯭ꯂꯣꯕal ꯏꯀꯣꯅꯣꯃꯤꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯏꯟꯇꯤꯒ꯭ꯔꯦꯇꯦꯠ ꯇꯧꯕ, ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯒ꯭ꯂꯣꯕal ꯏꯀꯣꯅꯣꯃꯤꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯏꯟꯇꯤꯒ꯭ꯔꯦꯁꯟꯗꯨꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯗꯛꯇꯤꯚ ꯀꯣꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯕ꯭ꯌꯨꯁꯟ, ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯗꯛꯇꯤꯚ ꯏꯟꯚꯣꯜꯚꯃꯦꯟꯇꯤ ꯌꯥꯎꯗꯕ, ꯄꯥꯔꯇꯤꯁꯤꯄꯦꯟ ꯑꯃꯈꯛ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯑꯦꯖ ꯑꯦ ꯀꯟꯖ꯭ꯌꯨꯃꯔ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ, ꯐꯣꯔ ꯏꯟꯁꯇꯦꯟꯁ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯏꯟꯇꯔꯅꯦꯁꯅꯦꯜ ꯃꯣꯅꯣꯄꯣꯂꯤ ꯑꯣꯔꯒꯅꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯁ, ꯐꯥꯏꯅꯥꯟꯁ ꯀꯦꯄꯤꯇꯦꯜ ꯀꯥꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯏꯟꯚꯦꯁꯇꯔꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯥꯛꯏ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯗ, ꯌꯨꯔꯣꯄꯤꯌꯟ ꯏꯟꯚꯦꯁꯇꯔꯁ, ꯑꯦꯁꯤꯌꯟ ꯏꯟꯚꯦꯁꯇꯔꯁ, ꯋꯥꯔꯜ ꯕꯦꯡꯛ, all kinds of IMF, everybody is there. But ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯁꯣꯁꯥꯏꯇꯤꯗ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯤꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯕꯦꯅꯤꯐꯤꯠꯁꯤ ꯀꯩꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤꯗꯗꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯆꯥꯎꯅ ꯒꯦꯞ ꯑꯃ ꯂꯩꯔꯦ꯫ ꯁꯤꯃ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯍꯥꯏꯖꯔꯛꯀꯗꯧꯔꯤꯁꯤꯗꯤ ꯄꯥꯎꯂꯣ ꯐ꯭ꯔꯦꯔꯦꯔꯦꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯦꯞꯁꯤꯗ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯁꯤ ꯀꯟꯅ ꯄꯨꯈꯠꯂꯤꯁꯤꯗꯤ internal rebuilding of the society, critical thinking tꯧꯁꯤ, critical awareness ꯇꯧꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯤ꯫ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯃꯤ ꯑꯃꯗ ꯅꯪ ꯐꯠꯇꯦ, ꯑꯩꯅ ꯆꯨꯝꯃꯤ, ꯅꯪꯅ ꯂꯥꯜꯂꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯈꯛꯇ ꯅꯠꯇꯅ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯤꯕꯁꯤꯁꯨ ꯀꯌꯥꯃꯨꯛ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯆꯨꯝꯕꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯦ ꯈꯟꯕ ꯉꯝꯕꯒꯤ ꯂꯦꯚꯦꯜꯗꯨꯅꯦꯕ, ꯗꯦꯠ ꯏꯁ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟ꯫ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯂꯥꯏꯅꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯃꯤꯡꯗ, ꯐꯨꯔꯨꯞꯀꯤ ꯃꯤꯡꯗ, ꯖꯥꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯤꯡꯗ, ꯀꯥꯡꯂꯨꯞꯀꯤ ꯃꯤꯡꯗ ꯃꯤꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯂꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯨꯝꯍꯠꯂꯒ ꯄꯨꯕꯁꯤ ꯂꯥꯏꯅ ꯊꯣꯛꯑꯦꯕ꯫ That is an easier aspect of politics through which the civil society, the common public can be mobilized without much of a hard work. But conscientization modelsida khunai ama semgatsi hairagadi, it is never easy. ꯑꯗꯨꯅꯅꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛꯁꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏ ꯍꯥꯏꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯈꯠꯅꯕꯒꯤ ꯃꯩꯇꯩ ꯅꯨꯡꯁꯤꯗꯦ ꯈꯠꯅꯔꯣ, ꯀꯨꯀꯤ ꯅꯨꯡꯁꯤꯗꯦ ꯈꯠꯅꯔꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯃꯔꯣꯝꯗ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯥꯏꯕ ꯅꯦꯔꯦꯇꯤꯚ ꯑꯃ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯎꯍꯟꯕ ꯉꯝꯃꯦ ꯄꯕ꯭ꯂꯤꯛꯇ꯫ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯅꯨꯡꯁꯤꯅꯅ ꯂꯩꯒꯗꯕꯅꯤ, ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯤ ꯉꯥꯛꯇꯅꯤ, ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯂꯣ ꯏꯟꯒꯗꯕꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯛꯄ ꯀꯥꯟꯁꯤꯗ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯍꯥꯏꯍꯟꯅꯤꯡꯗꯦ꯫ ꯐ꯭ꯔꯤ ꯃꯨꯚꯃꯦꯟ ꯄꯤꯒꯦ, ꯄꯤꯅꯤ, ꯄꯤꯌꯨ, ꯑꯦꯌꯥꯔꯄꯣꯔꯠ ꯑꯦꯛꯁꯦꯁ ꯇꯧꯒꯗꯧꯕꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯅꯔꯛꯄ ꯃꯇꯝꯁꯤꯗꯗꯤ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯏꯟꯇꯣꯂꯔꯦꯟ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯄꯣꯂꯤꯇꯤꯀꯦꯜ ꯀꯜꯆꯔ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯂꯩꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗꯗꯤ ꯃꯗꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯊꯣꯛꯄ ꯌꯥꯔꯛꯇꯕ꯫ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯒꯤ ꯍꯥꯎꯁꯁꯤꯗ ꯊꯝꯅꯤꯡꯕꯁꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯕ꯭ꯂꯦꯝꯁꯤ ꯂꯦꯚꯦꯜ ꯑꯅꯤꯗ ꯑꯟꯗꯔꯁꯇꯦꯟ ꯇꯧꯒꯗꯧꯕꯅꯤ꯫ ꯑꯍꯥꯟꯕ ꯂꯦꯚꯦꯜꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁꯣꯁꯥꯏꯇꯤꯁꯦ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯀꯦꯄꯥꯁꯤꯇꯤ ꯂꯩꯍꯟꯕ ꯉꯝꯒꯗ꯭ꯔꯥ? ꯃꯗꯨ ꯂꯩꯍꯟꯕ ꯉꯝꯅꯕꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛꯇ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯀꯔꯤ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯈ꯭ꯔꯒꯦ? ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯔꯤꯕꯁꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯂꯝꯕꯤ ꯌꯥꯎꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤꯅꯦ꯫ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁ꯭ꯀꯨꯜ ꯑꯉꯥꯡꯁꯤꯡ ꯂꯥꯏꯔꯤꯛ ꯇꯝꯕ ꯊꯥꯏ, ꯑꯩꯒꯤ ꯏꯆꯥ ꯂꯥꯏꯔꯤꯛ ꯄꯥꯏ, ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯨ ꯊꯕꯛ ꯇꯧꯔꯤ, ꯁꯣꯝꯁꯨ ꯏꯔꯤ, ꯉꯥꯡꯉꯤ, ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯇꯧꯔꯤ꯫ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯃꯁꯤ ꯏꯔꯤꯕ ꯉꯥꯡꯉꯤꯕꯁꯤ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯀꯌꯥꯃꯨꯛ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯁꯔꯨꯛ ꯑꯣꯏꯕꯒꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯐꯤꯂꯣꯁꯣꯐꯤꯀꯦꯜꯂꯤ ꯌꯦꯡꯉꯗꯤ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯀꯣꯏꯁꯟ ꯇꯧꯗꯕ ꯌꯥꯗꯕ꯫ ꯈꯨꯗꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯉꯝꯊꯣꯛꯅꯔꯗꯧꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯁꯤ, ꯏꯃꯦꯖꯤꯅꯦꯁꯟꯗ ꯚꯥꯞꯅ ꯁꯥꯔꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯉꯝꯊꯣꯛꯅꯔꯗꯧꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯦ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯂ? ꯕꯤꯀꯣꯁ ꯉꯝꯊꯣꯛꯅꯔꯗꯧꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏ ꯇꯥꯔꯗꯤ ꯀꯩꯗꯧꯔꯦ? ꯕꯥꯏꯅꯔꯤ ꯑꯃ ꯗꯦꯚꯦꯂꯞ ꯇꯧꯔꯦꯕ꯫ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯕꯥꯏꯅꯔꯤꯗꯨꯗꯤ ꯑꯃꯨꯛ ꯑꯦꯕꯁꯣꯂꯨꯠ ꯑꯣꯏꯗ꯭ꯔꯗꯤ ꯌꯥꯔꯣꯏꯕ, ꯕꯤꯀꯣꯁ ꯉꯝꯊꯣꯛꯅꯗꯣꯏꯅꯤꯅ꯫ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯕꯥꯏꯅꯔꯤꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯊꯤꯅ ꯐ꯭ꯂꯦꯛꯁꯤꯕꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ, ꯐ꯭ꯂꯨꯏꯗ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ, ꯃꯜꯇꯤꯄꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ, ꯗꯥꯏꯚꯔꯁ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯨꯝꯕ ꯄꯣꯂꯔꯤꯇꯤ ꯑꯃꯁꯨꯅꯦ ꯈꯨꯗꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯊꯥꯗꯧꯒꯤ ꯋꯥꯔꯤ ꯂꯥꯛꯏꯕ ꯖꯣꯃꯤꯒꯤ ꯖꯣꯁꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯋꯥꯔꯤ ꯂꯥꯛꯏꯕ ꯃꯗꯩꯗꯤ ꯃꯥꯔꯁꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯈꯔ ꯂꯩꯔ ꯊꯣꯛꯂꯛꯀꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯄꯣꯂꯔꯤꯇꯤꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯕꯥꯏꯅꯔꯤꯗ ꯁꯥꯒꯠꯄ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯆꯥꯛꯁꯤ ꯎꯍꯧꯗꯕꯁꯨ ꯌꯥꯎꯋꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯅꯅꯦ ꯑꯩꯗꯤ ꯇꯣꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯖꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯍꯤꯡꯃꯤꯟꯅꯕꯁꯤꯅ ꯍꯦꯟꯅ ꯐꯕ ꯑꯣꯞꯁꯟꯂꯥ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯒꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯨꯛꯅꯕꯁꯤꯅ ꯍꯦꯟꯅ ꯐꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯀꯝꯃ꯭ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯂꯦꯚꯦꯜꯗ ꯌꯦꯡꯉꯒꯗꯤ ꯍꯣꯔꯥꯏꯖꯣꯟꯇꯦꯜꯒꯤ ꯏꯁꯨꯗ ꯌꯦꯡꯉꯗꯤ ꯃꯁꯦ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯍꯤꯡꯃꯤꯟꯅꯕ ꯏꯁ ꯑ ꯕꯦꯇꯔ ꯑꯣꯞꯁꯟ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤꯅꯦ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯐꯤꯂꯣꯁꯣꯐꯤꯀꯦꯜ ꯑꯦꯗꯚꯥꯟꯇꯦꯖ ꯑꯁꯤ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯔꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯄꯤꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯦꯖꯨꯀꯦꯁꯟ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ ꯄꯣꯂꯤꯇꯤꯀꯦꯜ ꯀ꯭ꯂꯥꯁ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯈꯜꯂꯤꯕ ꯃꯤꯍꯨꯠ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯤꯡꯉꯤꯕ ꯏꯟꯁꯇꯤꯇ꯭ꯌꯨꯁꯟ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤꯅ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯦꯁ ꯑꯃ ꯀ꯭रिꯌꯦꯠ ꯇꯧꯕꯗ ꯏꯟꯇꯔꯦꯁ ꯂꯩꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛꯇ ꯊꯕꯛ ꯇꯧꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯏꯀꯩꯗ ꯄꯣꯂꯤꯁꯤ ꯁꯦꯝꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯃꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯋꯥꯍꯪꯁꯤꯡꯗꯨ ꯍꯪꯗꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯋꯥꯔꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯁꯔꯀꯥꯔ ꯁꯦꯝꯍꯜꯂꯗꯧꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯁꯔꯀꯥꯔ ꯂꯩꯍꯜꯂꯣꯏꯗꯧꯅꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯁꯤ ꯑꯦꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯍꯟꯗꯧꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯁꯤ ꯑꯦꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯍꯟꯗꯧꯅꯤ I think these ultimately doesn't solve the problem because ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯝꯕꯦꯗꯀꯔꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯑꯃ ꯂꯩ you cannot have political democracy without social democracy ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯤ ꯚꯣꯠ ꯊꯥꯗꯕꯁꯤ ꯄꯣꯂꯤꯇꯤꯀꯦꯜ ꯗꯦꯃꯣꯀ꯭ꯔꯦꯁꯤꯅꯤ ꯅꯤꯡꯇꯝꯕ ꯐꯪꯉꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯇꯤꯇ꯭ꯌꯨꯁꯟ ꯁꯦꯝꯕ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯄꯣꯂꯤꯇꯤꯀꯦꯜ ꯗꯦꯃꯣꯀ꯭ꯔꯦꯁꯤꯅꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯃꯤ ꯈꯨꯗꯤꯡꯃꯛ ꯈꯨꯟꯅꯥꯏꯗꯨꯗ ꯃꯥꯟꯅꯔꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯆꯥꯎꯈꯠꯄ ꯉꯝꯃꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯅꯨꯄꯤ ꯅꯨꯄꯥ ꯂꯣꯏꯅ ꯆꯠꯃꯤꯟꯅꯕ ꯌꯥꯔꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯁꯣꯁꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯗꯦꯃꯣꯀ꯭ꯔꯦꯁꯤꯅꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯗꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯏꯟꯁꯇꯤꯇ꯭ꯌꯨꯁꯟ ꯃꯃꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯇꯤꯇ꯭ꯌꯨꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯃꯔꯨꯝꯗ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯩ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯐ꯭ꯔꯤ ꯃꯨꯚꯃꯦꯟ ꯐꯪꯗꯦ ꯂꯥꯏꯐ ꯔꯥꯏꯠ ꯇꯨ ꯂꯥꯏꯐ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯄꯔꯂꯤ ꯂꯩꯇꯦ ꯑꯦꯛꯁꯇ꯭ꯔꯥꯑꯣꯔꯗꯤꯅꯔꯤ ꯂꯣꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯂꯩ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯔꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯖꯦꯟꯇꯦꯁꯟꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯐꯨꯜꯂꯤ ꯔꯦꯄ꯭ꯔꯖꯦꯟ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯉꯝꯗꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯚꯣꯏꯁꯦꯁ ꯇꯥꯕ ꯉꯝꯗꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯥꯏ ꯗꯤ ꯄꯤꯁꯤꯡꯒꯤ ꯏꯁꯨꯁ ꯍꯦꯟꯗꯜ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯋꯥꯏ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯥꯟꯁꯄꯦꯔꯦꯟꯁꯤ ꯋꯥꯠꯂꯤ ꯑꯗꯩꯗꯤ ꯑꯦꯝꯄ꯭ꯂꯣꯏꯃꯦꯟ ꯀꯦꯄꯥꯁꯤꯇꯤ ꯑꯗꯩꯗꯤ ꯔꯦꯚꯤꯅ꯭ꯌू ꯀꯂꯦꯛꯁꯟ fair governance, quality of roads, quality of water, quality of education, quality of government schools. These are all big questions that shall have to be uh, understood before we jump onto the big, grand ideas that we will be like this and we were like this. ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯌꯥꯗꯕ ꯂꯥꯛꯄ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯉꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯗꯤꯁꯀꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯇꯣꯄꯤꯛ ꯑꯁꯤꯗ ꯖꯁꯇꯤꯁ ꯇꯧꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯒꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯈꯟꯕꯗꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯒ꯭ꯔꯥꯁꯔꯨꯠꯇꯒꯤ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯇꯤꯛ ꯑꯃ ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯇꯤꯛ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯋꯥꯍꯩꯁꯤꯃꯛꯁꯨꯅꯦꯕ ꯄꯥꯎꯂꯣ ꯐ꯭ꯔꯦꯔꯦꯔꯅ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯗ ꯄꯤꯅꯤꯡꯉꯤꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯇꯤꯛꯇꯤ ꯇꯧꯗꯕꯤꯗ ꯑꯦꯂꯤꯒꯦꯁꯟ ꯇꯧꯕꯅ ꯌꯥꯔꯣꯏꯕ ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯇꯤꯛꯇꯤ ꯇꯧꯗꯕꯤꯗ ꯄꯥꯋꯔꯒ ꯏꯀ꯭ꯋꯦꯁꯟ ꯁꯦꯝꯕꯅ ꯌꯥꯔꯣꯏꯕ ꯏꯠꯁ ꯂꯥꯏꯛ ꯁ꯭ꯄꯤꯀꯤꯡ ꯇ꯭ꯔꯨꯠ ꯇꯨ ꯗ ꯄꯥꯋꯔ ꯈ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯗꯒꯤ ꯂꯨꯕꯁꯤꯗꯤ ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯇꯤꯀꯦꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯕꯁꯤꯅꯤ ꯈ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯗꯒꯤ ꯂꯨꯕꯁꯤꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ critic to the speaking truth to the powers ꯑꯗꯣ ꯃꯁꯤꯒꯤ critical ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯔꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯑꯗꯩꯗꯤ speaking truth to the powers ꯇꯧꯔꯔꯣꯏꯁꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ status quo ꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯉꯥꯡꯅꯔꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯒꯗꯤ that is the easiest thing one can ever do one can ever write aduna before whatever we write before whatever we say we have to think twice thrice if it is going to hurt somebody if it is going to be against the principles of creative idea. It is against if it is going to be against the idea of what you call conscientization. ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯄꯥꯝꯖꯕꯁꯤꯗꯤ ꯁꯣꯁꯥꯏꯇꯤꯒꯤ ꯚꯦꯂꯨ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯤ ꯆꯦꯟꯖꯀꯤ ꯚꯦꯂꯨ ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯇꯤꯛꯀꯤ ꯚꯦꯂꯨ ꯗꯦꯃꯣꯀ꯭ꯔꯦꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯚꯦꯂꯨ ꯁꯦꯀꯨꯂꯔꯤꯖꯝꯒꯤ ꯚꯦꯂꯨ ꯁꯣꯁꯤꯌꯦꯂꯤꯁꯇꯤꯛ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯤꯌꯥꯒꯤ ꯚꯦꯂꯨ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ ꯚꯦꯂꯨ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯀꯔꯝ ꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯔꯤꯀ꯭ꯂꯦꯝ ꯇꯧꯒꯗꯒꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯋꯥꯍꯪ ꯑꯃꯅꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯅꯗꯤ ꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯀꯥꯟꯗꯗꯤ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯌꯨꯇꯣꯄꯤꯌꯟ ꯑꯣꯏꯃꯟꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯅꯤ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯤꯌꯦꯜ ꯑꯣꯏꯃꯟꯈ꯭ꯔꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯅꯤ ꯑꯗꯨꯕꯨ ꯗꯦꯟ why do we have to talk about conscientization then ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ conscientizationꯒꯤ ꯋꯥꯔꯤ ꯁꯥꯟꯅꯗꯕꯅ ꯐꯩ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯗꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯛꯀꯅꯦꯕ because we are picking up a concept that is very historically important particularly in the post colonial times in the 1960s this very idea came up as a critic of the then existing political power, institution, and the model of economy and the model of education that was completely very capitalist, very consumerist. ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯍꯔꯕꯔꯠ ꯃꯥꯔꯀ꯭ꯌꯨꯖꯦ ꯒꯥꯏꯅ ꯂꯩ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯍꯥꯏ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯀꯟꯖ꯭ꯌꯨꯃꯔꯤꯖꯝ ꯂꯥꯛꯄ ꯃꯇꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯀꯦꯄꯤꯇalism ꯂꯥꯛꯄ ꯃꯇꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯐꯤꯇꯦꯔꯤꯡ ꯂꯥꯛꯄ ꯃꯇꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ education ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯋꯥꯈꯜꯂꯣꯟꯁꯦ one dimensional ꯑꯣꯏ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯤ ꯃꯤꯁꯦ only profit only power only as a consumer you think therefore ꯑꯩꯅ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯐꯅ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ utopian ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯩꯉꯣꯟꯗ allegation ꯇꯧꯔꯒꯁꯨ I don't think it is utopian. This is basically what we need for a stable society. ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛꯇ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯕꯪꯒ꯭ꯂꯥꯗꯦꯁꯇ ꯔꯦꯗꯤꯀꯦꯂꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟ ꯂꯥꯛꯏꯕꯅꯣ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛꯇ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯌꯥꯗ ꯔꯤꯂꯤꯖꯤꯌꯁ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯦꯛꯇꯤꯁꯦꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯒꯤ ꯃꯔꯛꯇ ꯃꯨꯛꯅꯕ ꯂꯥꯛꯏꯕꯅꯣ ꯀꯔꯤꯒꯤꯗꯃꯛꯇ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯅꯦꯕꯔꯤꯡ ꯀꯟꯇ꯭ꯔꯤꯁꯗ ꯗꯦꯃꯣꯀ꯭ꯔꯦꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯏꯁꯨ ꯑꯆꯧꯕ ꯂꯥꯛꯏꯕꯅꯣ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤꯡꯁꯦ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯗꯦꯃꯣꯀ꯭ꯔꯦꯇꯤꯛ ꯀꯜꯆꯔ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯕ꯭ꯔꯦꯛ ꯗꯥꯎꯟ ꯇꯧꯔꯛꯄꯒꯤꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯅꯤꯡꯉꯦ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯉꯁꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔꯗ ꯈꯟꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯎꯪꯈꯠꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯑꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯌꯥ ꯒꯚꯔꯟꯃꯦꯟꯠꯒꯤ ꯑꯁꯣꯏꯕ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯐ꯭रीꯗꯝ ꯗꯦꯃꯣꯀ꯭ꯔꯦꯇꯤꯛ ꯑꯣꯏꯕ ꯔꯥꯏꯠꯁ ꯐꯟꯗꯥꯃꯦꯟꯇꯦꯜ ꯔꯥꯏꯠꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯤ ꯑꯦꯟꯁꯤꯌꯣꯔ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯉꯝꯗ꯭ꯔꯕꯁꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯀꯔꯝꯍꯥꯏꯅ ꯍꯤꯡꯒꯗꯒꯦ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟꯒꯤ ꯃꯦꯀꯥꯅꯤꯖꯝ ꯑꯃꯁꯨ ꯄꯨꯊꯣꯛꯄ ꯇꯥꯏ. On the one side, you may think that the state is not doing enough to ensure what you think as fundamental right. On the other side, there is also a reality called geopolitics, which is like a theater of global powers where your interests will be always subsumed by the global geopolitical interests of the countries. ꯑꯗꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯗꯤ ꯁꯤ ꯐꯤꯕꯝꯁꯤꯗ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯨ swept away ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯇꯧꯒꯗ꯭ꯔꯥ or do we have to create a space where we can cling on to for our survival ꯑꯗꯨ ꯑꯣꯏꯔꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯈꯟꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ conscientization ꯒꯤ ideas ꯄꯨꯊꯣꯛꯑꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ social fabric ꯑꯁꯦ ꯁꯦꯝꯒꯠꯄ ꯇꯥꯏ. We have to save our society with principles of democracy, with principles of uh, empathy, and the principle of dignity and self-respect for others. ꯑꯗꯨ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯗꯨꯗ work ꯇꯧꯕ ꯇꯥꯏ. ꯀꯃꯥꯏ work ꯇꯧꯗꯣꯏꯕ? Education is very important sector where we can work on this. ꯑꯩꯅ suggestion ꯄꯤꯖꯕꯅꯤ. ꯆꯍꯤꯁꯦ ꯈꯨꯗꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯃꯥꯂꯦꯝꯁꯤꯗ happiness index ꯌꯦꯡꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯚꯨꯇꯥꯟꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒ ꯌꯨꯝ ꯊꯪꯅꯔꯤꯕ ꯚꯨꯇꯥꯟꯁꯤ it has a very good record. Bhutan is not economically very powerful. Bhutan is militarily not powerful. Bhutan is not a big country. It's not a big economy, but it's still people are happy just because they have these very important dimension, what we call today conscientization, because they know how to deal with the environment. They know what kind of participatory democracy is required. They know what is the role of a government, and the government plays the same kind of role. ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯤ ꯂꯩꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯂꯩꯉꯥꯛ ꯏꯟꯁꯇꯤꯇ꯭ꯌꯨꯁꯟꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤꯅ ꯄꯕ꯭ꯂꯤꯛꯁꯤ ꯁꯦꯀ꯭ꯌꯣꯔ ꯇꯧꯍꯟꯗ꯭ꯔꯒ ꯄꯕ꯭ꯂꯤꯛꯁꯤ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯇꯦꯛ ꯇꯧꯍꯟꯗ꯭ꯔꯒ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯁꯦꯟ ꯀꯃꯥꯏꯅ ꯗꯤꯜ ꯇꯧꯒꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯃꯦꯀꯥꯅꯤꯖꯝꯁꯦ ꯃꯁꯥꯅ ꯇꯥꯕꯅꯤ ꯉꯥꯎꯔꯛꯄ ꯑꯗꯨꯝ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯒꯤ ꯃꯣꯠꯇꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯍꯥꯏꯖꯅꯤꯡꯕꯗꯤ I'll take another 3-4 minutes and say that education is one area. ꯑꯗꯨꯅꯕꯨ Paulo Freireꯅ conscientization ꯒꯤ ideas ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯔꯛꯄ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯃꯥꯒꯤ ꯈ꯭ꯋꯥꯏꯗꯒꯤ important target ꯁꯤꯗꯤ to critique and challenge conventional model of education. ꯈꯨꯗꯝ ꯑꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯩ ꯏꯆꯥꯁꯤꯡꯁꯤ ꯍꯧꯖꯤꯛ ꯂꯥꯏꯔꯤꯛ ꯄꯥꯕ ꯆꯤꯟꯐꯥ ꯄꯨꯅꯕ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯔꯤ ꯁꯣꯝꯒꯤꯁꯨ ꯂꯣꯏ ꯍꯣꯠꯅꯔꯝꯒꯅꯤ but they are never taught how to have good relationship with the environment, how to escape the disastrous human practices, how to deal with consumerism, how to deal with advertisement, how to deal with social media. ꯁꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯑꯉꯥꯡꯁꯤꯡꯅ ꯀꯩꯁꯨ ꯇꯝꯕꯤꯗꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ just we are getting into some kind of a banking education ꯍꯥꯏꯕ banking education ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯗꯤ ꯃꯀꯣꯛꯇ ꯄꯪꯍꯥꯞ ꯍꯥꯞꯆꯟꯕ without any critical assessment of what has been put into the brain aduna you might call me a utopian but I am sure I'm not a utopian because people do not have much capacity at this moment in time to critique, to creatively critique, and to resist the institutions of power because they have penetrated everywhere and it has actually dent our freedom. That is my point. ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯉꯁꯥꯏ ꯍꯧꯔꯛꯄꯗ ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯋꯥ ꯉꯥꯡꯕꯒꯤ freedom ꯂꯩꯇ꯭ꯔꯕ, ꯍꯥꯏꯅꯤꯡꯕ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯒꯤ freedom ꯂꯩꯇ꯭ꯔꯕ, ꯑꯗꯩꯗꯤ changeꯒꯤ freedom ꯂꯩꯇ꯭ꯔꯕ, then of course society will break down gradually. And the fights between communities or amongst communities or amongst religious denominations are obvious results of those, decaying or deadening institutions of democracy. ꯑꯔꯣꯏꯕꯗ conscientization ꯍꯥꯏꯕ ꯑꯁꯦ ꯏꯆꯥꯁꯤꯡꯗ ꯇꯝꯕꯤꯕ ꯃꯊꯧ ꯇꯥꯏ, ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯏꯁꯥꯁꯨ ꯇꯝꯕ ꯃꯊꯧ ꯇꯥꯏ, ꯁꯣꯁꯥꯏꯇꯤꯗ ꯁꯤꯒꯤ ꯚꯦꯂꯨ ꯀ꯭ರಿꯌꯦꯠ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯇꯥꯏ. We have to critique the power if they're going to derogate your basic power to conscientize things, because ꯉꯁꯥꯏ ꯍꯧꯔꯛꯄꯗ ꯍꯥꯏꯈꯤꯕꯗꯣ ꯁꯥꯟꯅꯁꯨ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯤꯈꯤꯕ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯤꯑꯣꯏꯕꯁꯤ ꯋꯥꯈꯜ ꯈꯟꯕ ꯉꯝꯃꯤ, ꯀ꯭ꯔꯤꯇꯤꯛ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯉꯝꯃꯤ, ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯦꯞ ꯄꯨꯊꯣꯛꯄ ꯉꯝꯃꯤ. ꯑꯗꯨꯅꯕꯨ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯁꯤ we are far more superior in comparison to animals and plants. Even though they are living beings, we are much more superior because we know how to manipulate things, but also we know how to check manipulation of things. ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯒꯤ ꯋꯥꯈꯜꯗꯗꯤ ꯇꯤꯚꯤꯗ ꯐꯅꯌꯥꯝ ꯊꯣꯛꯑꯁꯨ, ꯂꯥꯏꯔꯤꯛ ꯐꯅꯌꯥꯝ ꯏꯔꯁꯨ, ꯑꯥꯔꯇꯤꯀꯜ ꯐꯅꯌꯥꯝ ꯏꯔꯁꯨ, ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ speaking truth to the power ꯇꯨꯒꯤ element ꯌꯥꯎꯗ꯭ꯔꯗꯤ ꯀꯝꯃ꯭ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯇꯤ ꯃꯁꯦꯟꯒꯤ ꯃꯔꯛꯇ ꯑꯟꯗꯔꯁꯇꯦꯟꯗꯤꯡ ꯂꯥꯛꯑꯣꯏ. ꯑꯗꯨꯒ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯀꯝꯃ꯭ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯇꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯒ ꯂꯥꯜꯍꯧꯕ, ꯈꯨꯠꯂꯥꯏ ꯄꯥꯏꯔꯒ ꯇꯦꯔꯔ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯑꯗꯨ ꯌꯥꯎꯗꯕꯤꯗ common civilians have common interests. The poor of X community and the poor of the Y community have no such huge animosity. Of course, identity is a part of our human reality, but identity is not everything. There is something called economy, there is something called democracy, there is something called political goods, there is something called development, there is something called dignity, which is which are in fact beyond what we call the cultural and ethnic identity. ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯄꯥꯈꯠꯄꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯑꯥꯔꯇꯤꯀꯜ ꯏꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ, ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯉꯥꯡꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗ ꯑꯦꯛꯁ ꯑꯃꯈꯛꯇꯅ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯇꯥꯔꯒꯦꯠ ꯇꯧꯕ, ꯑꯃꯗꯤ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯦꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟ ꯁꯨꯇꯧ ꯇꯧꯗꯕ, ꯑꯗꯣ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯕ꯭ꯂꯥꯡꯀꯦꯠ ꯇꯔꯝꯁ ꯃꯌꯥꯝ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯕ, ꯁꯤ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯁꯦ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯦꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯔꯒ ꯈꯔ ꯔꯤꯚꯤꯌꯨ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯌꯥꯏ. ꯑꯗꯨ ꯍꯦꯛ ꯇꯧꯕ ꯃꯇꯝꯗꯗꯤ ꯉꯁꯥꯏꯒꯤ ꯇꯦꯔꯔ ꯑꯥꯏꯗꯦꯟꯇꯤꯇꯤꯕꯨ ꯁꯤꯖꯤꯟꯅꯔꯒ ꯇꯦꯔꯔ ꯇꯧꯔꯤꯁꯦ ꯌꯥꯝ ꯏꯟꯗꯤꯌꯟ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯠꯀꯤ ꯀꯣꯝꯄ꯭ꯂꯦꯛꯁꯤꯇꯤ ꯂꯩꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯂꯩꯇꯕ꯭ꯔꯥ ꯌꯥꯎꯕꯤꯔꯤꯕ ꯃꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯈꯟꯕꯤꯔꯣ, ꯍꯪꯕꯤꯔꯣ. But if you talk about our inability to move on the highways, our inability to resettle our population on both sides, I think these are some fundamental violations of our capacity, our right to conscientization, because we think that is it is our obvious natural right. Mi khara hayan khalasini. Em phibamni yadan tayro. No, that's not agreeable, because India gi manungda sumaina suyana prolong toba denial zi uh, mass level da kadai laikhageba. Perhaps another example could be the Kashmiri Pandits. Adubu sidadi displacement ani maromda tawrineba, and there is room for dealing with it because both the sides are displaced. Aduna ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯂꯩꯔꯤꯕ status quo ꯁꯤꯗ align ꯇꯧꯔꯒ ꯁꯨꯝ ꯋꯥ ꯉꯥꯡ ꯂꯩꯔꯗꯤ ꯆꯦꯟ ꯁꯨꯡꯄꯨ ꯄꯨꯔꯛꯑꯣꯏꯕ. ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ justiceꯀꯤ ꯋꯥꯐꯝ ꯄꯨꯒꯗꯕꯅꯤ. of course ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯅꯤꯄꯨꯔ ꯀꯟꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯦ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏ ꯑꯗꯨꯒꯤ empathy ꯑꯃ, creative empathy ꯑꯃ ꯗꯔꯀꯥꯔ ꯂꯩ. of course illegal immigration, poppy plantation, or corruption, or lack of adherence to constitutional values, these are beyond communities. These are something the state, the institutions of democracy, institutions of representation should handle with. Why should the community take the burden to resolve this problem? ꯑꯩꯅ ꯁꯣꯝꯅ ꯇꯧꯒꯗꯧꯕ ꯅꯠꯇꯦꯕ. ꯑꯩꯅ ꯉꯔꯥꯡ discussionꯗꯁꯨ ꯍꯥꯏꯖꯕꯅꯤ. I I pay about 30% of my salaries, income, as tax. I'm paying tax to the government. For sure, mayam's tax piri. Every single individual pays tax, and the meaning of paying tax is that state is going to take care of your freedom, your well-being ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯅꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯁ꯭ꯇꯦꯠꯇ ꯑꯩꯈꯣꯏꯅ ꯏꯟꯀꯝ ꯇꯦꯛꯁ ꯄꯤꯕꯁꯦ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟ ꯄꯨꯁꯤꯜꯂꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯁꯦ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯇꯦꯛ ꯇꯧꯕꯤꯒꯗꯕꯅꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯁꯦ ꯀ꯭ꯂꯦꯝ ꯃꯁꯥꯅ ꯇꯧꯐꯝ ꯊꯣꯛꯄ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯣ ꯑꯗ ꯑꯩ ꯄ꯭ꯔꯣꯇꯦꯛ ꯇꯧꯕꯤꯕꯁꯤ ꯀꯝꯃ꯭ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯇꯤ ꯑꯃꯅ ꯇꯧꯒꯗꯧꯕ ꯅꯠꯇꯦꯕ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯀꯝꯃ꯭ꯌꯨꯅꯤꯇꯤ ꯃꯁꯦꯟꯗ ꯏꯟꯖꯤꯟꯅꯔꯒ ꯑꯣꯐ ꯀꯣꯔꯁ ꯄꯤꯁ ꯕꯤꯜꯗꯤꯡ ꯍꯥꯏꯕꯁꯤ communities are very important, but law and order, safety and security of individuals and the citizens are supposed to be handled by and secured by the state institutions. 하이도이 ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯣ ꯑꯗꯨꯅ ꯀꯣꯟꯁꯥꯏꯟꯇꯥꯏꯖꯦꯁꯟ ꯁꯦꯡꯅ ꯇꯧꯁꯤ ꯍꯥꯏꯔꯗꯤ ꯑꯩꯅ ꯈꯟꯖꯕꯗ ꯚꯨꯇꯥꯟꯒꯤ ꯑꯦꯛꯖꯥꯝꯄꯜ ꯄꯟꯖꯈꯤꯕꯗ ꯃꯈꯣꯏ ꯃꯣꯅꯥꯔꯀꯤꯗꯒꯤ ꯌꯥꯝꯅ ꯀꯨꯏꯕ ꯅꯠꯇ꯭ꯔꯤ ꯃꯣꯏ ꯗꯦꯃꯣꯀ꯭ꯔꯦꯇꯤꯛ ꯃꯣꯅꯥꯔꯀꯤꯗ ꯂꯥꯛꯏꯁꯦ ꯑꯗꯣ ꯃꯈꯣꯏꯒꯤ ꯍꯦꯄꯤꯅꯦꯁ ꯏꯟꯗꯦꯛꯁꯁꯤ ꯋꯥꯡꯉꯦꯕ because they have got this ability to conscientize their society and they've worked on that. They have laws on that. They have adherence to laws. We are reportedly hearing that the VC of a university goes to his office or her office on bicycle. Can you imagine that happening in the country or in the state of Manipur? In Denmark, I've heard it